Welcome to the Property Nomads Podcast. We've got an absolute treat for you today, joined by a guy who has reached over 100 million people recently on social media through a lot of content creation. And we're going to dip into how he's done that, what the future holds, and how that's helped the multitude of businesses that he's in, dealing with an author, a man that loves entrepreneurship and business in general. Aaron Knightley, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me, mate, and looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's people that are sitting around thinking, how do you reach 100 million people? I should add, you've done that in 25 days. Am I not mistaken?
No, so in total, if we're talking about TikTok, I've trended now over 100 million times, and it's from sort of when I started on TikTok specifically, which was about 4.5 months ago, something like that. So it's been done in quite a, I would say a short period of time. But in terms of the most recent reach, we're talking just now recently with another viral video, we're looking at about 30 million people in about 90 days, which is pretty cool. So there's a lot of people.
Yeah, that's nuts when you put the numbers like that. I guess to sort of just go for the jugular, I say, how have you done that? But it's that old meme of people looking at the iceberg and they can see the tip, but not all the hard work underneath. So let's go back to the start. Was that always the aim? How have you done it? What have you done? Just so people get an idea of sort of content you put out as well.
Yeah, I think it just started with knowing that you've got to be very current. You've got to move with the times. That's one thing that's always been quite important to me, is the not to get left behind attitude. So having to sort of move, having to learn, everything's analytics now. Everything's, you're having to reevaluate what worked, what didn't work. I mean, we're talking, specifically where we talk about TikTok there, I can look at the last 3 videos that I've put out, only collectively really. They're only reaching nearly 2,000 people, but they're still yet to grow throughout today. I've only literally just posted them, but it's just testing. So knowing what the audience wants, understanding that attention spans are really short now. It was certainly never the plan, but when you are growing a business and you're building a brand, obviously it always falls back on the more eyes on you, the better, because the more people that know about you, as long as your infrastructure and your funnels are set up correctly, you could probably capture a lot of that audience. And that was basically the aim of the game, and still is the aim of the game. But what I have learned very quickly is, if you are growing quickly on a platform, especially like the likes of TikTok, not only can you generate new clients, but the amount of brand deals that are on the table at the moment, that's where it becomes really lucrative. And I suppose that gives you a bit of an incentive to carry on posting, because you start getting good money for it off the back of it, which, could be one of your best incomes.
That's fair enough. In terms of funnels, then, because just looking at other things that you host of the Roundtable podcast, you got Unlock Your Peak Performance as well. So, is it fair to say that the funnels are set up so ultimately people are going to be subscribing to the podcast, and then with the peak performance that might have mastermind groups, etc., etc. Have I got the right idea?
Yeah, I think, you have to. I mean, this is what I do on my one-to-one consultations, is I always talk about, however many touch points that you've got to your business or brand, you always want to have everyone do a full circle. So if they land on one thing, it should tie into everything. And every time they land on something new about you, it should bring them full circle to kind of solidify the fact that you are who you are, and the reason why they should work with you for all these reasons to how they found you. So yeah, absolutely, I've tied it all in. It's just that the further you go into it, and I'm looking at my sort of TikTok page here, over the last 4 or 5 days, I've done sort of 7 or 8 posts, and they're hitting high numbers now. So with consistency, you reach this wider audience, and then you start to learn that there's so many more opportunities out there other than your bread and butter and your other little side businesses. Because I think at the moment, what I'm learning, although sort of I've got myself in a few different pies at the moment in terms of businesses, is that we're in a real opportunity where growth can happen really quickly if you're managing your time correctly, if you're putting energy into certain areas. And that's what I'm trying to do at the moment, behind the scenes to what people see on the camera. I'm taking on VAs, I'm taking on like lead generators, sales progressors now. We're taking on more employees for peak performance. So behind the scenes, although externally on socials it looks like it's all great and everything like that, and it might seem that you can have your hand in all these different pies and it's very simple, but behind the scenes actually we're building a huge infrastructure, because the more eyes that you reach, the more people want to know about you, and it's almost like trying to cater for everyone, trying to find out and ask questions and book calls, and you've got to have something in place, hence the funnels.
Yeah, perfectly understandable. I was going to ask how have you managed to sort of keep your head above water, so to speak? Because once it blows up, and if it's not expected, then the last thing you want is people to get into those funnels, and then it just is a bit of a shit show. I'm not saying with you it's definitely not, but I can imagine if you're not prepared for it, that could lead to the end very quickly before it's even begun.
Yeah, you don't want people falling off the end of the cliff and you can't capture them. I think what it was for me, a bit of a wake up call, was when I had my first big video that went viral, that's on over 18 million now. On that one video, I had something like 100 one-to-one consultation bookings within like less than 24 hours. And I wasn't able to cope with it. And the problem is, I sat there in the evening, I was thinking, I'm going to lose all this revenue, because I can only cater. I've only got so many hours in the day. You can only book in so many calls over the week. And what you don't want to do is, it kind of just makes you think, I need to have something in place. So I started looking more behind the scenes and really sort of thinking, actually, how can I scale things opposed to trying to do a lot on my own? And that was probably the biggest thing, especially with investors. I had a lot of investor interest, which had a huge spike across all platforms. But what I will say, if anyone is on social media and they are trying to grow a brand and trying to reach a wider audience, that is only a good thing if you've got a great service and a great message to put out there. It's only a good thing. More eyes, more opportunity. And
then what would you say that your message is? I'll be 100% completely honest with you. I'm not much of a person for social. Aaron's business partner, Aaron's more the one for that. So I'm not overly clued in. So what sort of stuff, what was the video actually that went viral? What was that? What were you talking about in that video that went chaotic?
Well, the video, the big one that went viral was called Last One In, First One Out. And some people now see me in the street, or if I've been certain places, people will go, "Oh, you're the last one in, first one out guy," which is hilarious. It's happened quite a lot now. So, the message was, from my experience in full-time employment, just that, if you're working for certain companies, more bigger companies, there is becoming a real issue with the lack of respect, lack of payment, especially in a world where prices are going up so much. Mm-hmm. People are feeling undervalued. And I've always been a very outspoken person. And a long time ago, I left my full-time job, but I'm now basically just, because I've never really shared too many experiences around it. But off the back of that video and some smaller conversations, it's a very relatable topic. I spoke about, basically, look, if you're going into your work, do your contracted hours, do what you have to do, keep your nut down. And then outside of work, build a business that you're going to be proud of and you're going to get 100% fulfillment. And you can start your own, team and company where you can then do it the right way. And like with peak performance, we're showing everyone 100% respect, paid accordingly, and everyone's a fair, equal team member, regardless of what role you are in the company. And that's the way that I want to build, especially peak performance, because it will be a big team company. I think we're a team of about 6 at the moment. So that was my message. And of course, it related to a lot of people, and that had a snowball effect. And I'd done a video very similar, which was called Employment, the other day. And instantly that hit, that's nearly at 600,000. And that done that in like a few hours. So it's very relatable.
Fair enough. So I'm making a note of that. So we've got relatable here. And then in terms of other content, again, not 100% clued up on it. Is it a lot of tagging, or is it just, as long as the content's good, it's relatable? Are you finding that that's doing it, or what other things are you doing to get that reach that you're getting at the moment?
I think when you're posting content, there's a balance. You've got to like the content that you post in, but liking your own content is, it's like blowing your own trumpet. It's not always going to be everyone's cup of tea. So what I've learned, especially with TikTok, I had a video on Instagram that done pretty well. Got something like 17,000 views. It went pretty big, but again, you've either got to pull on the heartstrings. You've got to be relatable. There's either got to be an agreement or a disagreement. And you have to provide the opportunity for the viewers to comment within the comments. When you post a video, every time I look at it now, my own content, I think, can people engage with comments? Does it cause an agreement or disagreement? Is it humor? Is it information? Is it drama? What category am I falling into? And within the first 4 seconds, am I getting a reaction from people? Because that's the other thing. Everyone's attention span is becoming so much shorter now, even in business. If you go up to someone in a network event and they're just rambling on and, you just think, oh my God, get on with it. We've all got that attitude of just spit it out. So we have to take that into consideration. So now, apart from the odd video here and there, which, I'll personally like, when I post a video now, I really put myself in the consumer's seat and think, would I comment and watch my own video? So that's how that works. And of course, through the power of social media comes a lot of business opportunities, and we might get into that.
We will, because that was a question I had on my list. I had another question that popped into my head that's now completely gone out of my head, which is always good from a podcast host point of view. Completely forgot that question. Yeah, I know what I was going to ask. In terms of repurposing content and whatnot, because again, your audience for TikTok is probably going to be different from Instagram, it's different from LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Are you recording the content once and then you've got a team in the background that's taking a snippet here and posting it here? Or are you just full on recording different content for different channels all the time? How are you managing that?
So when it comes to TikTok, I fully manage all of it. So all the content that's cut up, any of the editing, I do that fully myself. A lot of the content's obviously taken from full podcast videos in London, which the podcast videos will be edited by my videographer. We've got 2 videographers, and that will go away to be edited. And then what I do is, once I get that sort of raw footage, I'll then chop that up to what I think is suitable for TikTok. And the great thing is, once I've posted it on TikTok, I repurpose that on Instagram and LinkedIn. Now, with LinkedIn, it's funny because back in the day, I've been on LinkedIn for quite a while. It's where I started, really, is that once upon a time, a lot of the content that I post now wouldn't have been suitable or would have put some people off having that business relationship with me. Whereas now LinkedIn's become more of an open, diversified platform. So I can still get a lot of business done. And in fact, what I would say to anyone who is listening to this is that being authentic and transparent through some of my other content on other platforms, and where the brand has grown, I have a lot more people now just reaching out just to say, hi, Aaron, been following you for a while. Would love to work with you. Got some money. What can we do? It's not even having to really sort of not sell myself, but not really having to actually pitch for it anymore. It's more of a case of people are just wanting to work with me because of what, I'm popping up here or I'm popping up there. So I suppose they want to get involved one way or another. And that ties into a lot of the investment stuff that I do, which is great because, again, it's proof of concept. The more eyes that are on you, it kind of solidifies that people should work with you, which is where I'm going with all of this.
In terms of branding then, so looking through, we've got the Roundtable podcast, so, that could be a brand in itself, a Peak Performance, which again could be a brand in itself, and then obviously yourself, Aaron Knightley. So how are you juggling those 3 in any way, or is it, it's all about you as in Aaron Knightley, but then that happens to lead into funnels, which are, your podcast and Peak Performance. How have you set that up?
That is, so in terms of the brand, you've got, I would say the only one that is very separate is the Peak Performance brand. I mean, branding all ties in, it's like look at David Beckham, one of the biggest brands in the world, but he's got a lot of entities, but you know him as the name. I suppose really you're the name that our mothers and fathers gave us, that becomes the brand, so it's just Aaron Knightley. I hope that my name will be a lot bigger in 6 months' time than it is now, and another 6 months from now. So, but when it comes to how things are broken up, Peak Performance is nice, because Paul, my business partner for Peak Performance, he's got his own things, he's got his own business, he's got his own projects and stuff like that. And it's nice because he brings in a new audience to the one brand, which is Peak Performance. And I take everything that I'm building on my own into Peak Performance. So that's become a real nice entity in terms of almost collaborating and bringing two sides of it. And Peak Performance, the name, because obviously, we've got Alan Sugar there in the background. We've got we've got some great sponsors on board. We don't really have to even ask for sponsors. Sponsorship is offered left, right, and centre to us. We had 3 sponsors come on board, brand new sponsors yesterday in a period of about half an hour, from literally a couple of voice notes. It was that simple. So for our next event, we've got 12 incredible sponsors. So that brand of its own, again, does the job. It does what it says on the tin. When people now hear Peak Performance events, it's a case of, how can I get involved, opposed to wanting to know all the ins and outs. The same for my brand is, I'd love to have sort of the Aaron Knightley brand sort of really be a brand where people want to work with me on all different platforms, brand deals, sponsorship, the YouTube, investments, whatever it might be. I've got a lot of collaborations at the moment. I'm due to attend sort of 5-6 other podcasts. That's come off branding. So, and that can be possible for everyone. And I think that's only a good thing, as long as you're putting out a good message and you've got a good service to offer. So branding at the moment is truly the way forward when it comes to lucrative opportunities. So it's something I'm very hot on at the moment.
And to me, it sounds like a case of be yourself, be authentic. I mean, I always say authenticity, integrity, congruency. As long as you got them 3, you're not hiding anything. You're not going to dupe people out of their crypto like certain billionaires. But anyway, relatable topics. Hey,
you know what? Just quickly on that, because I do agree with you. I think over the next, I really believe this, over the next year or 6, 7, 8 months, I think there's going to be a huge shift in being authentic and transparent, opposed to this life that everyone's seeing that is actually affecting quite a lot of people, of this perfect lifestyle, a lot of money, because where people are going to be crippled in terms of finances, and people will struggle more than others over this next 6 to 12 months, whatever it be. I think people will take more to the people offering reality and the hardship, opposed to this perfect Lamborghini lifestyle. I think there will be a dramatic shift, and I'm going to be on the side of the reality of it. So that's my belief anyway.
No, I like that, because I remember reading them from bios before we started this call, working class background. And, I'd say that my parents working class as well. So you kind of get this, you got to put graft in at the end of the day. You don't just sit around, do naffle and, don't come to you like that. It might for certain people in certain parts of the world, it blah, blah, blah. But yeah, if you can have that relatability, as you say, then, that gives you a very good chance to, to move forward. You mentioned on various investments and opportunities and bits and bobs like that. From what I've understood, that when you started doing all your social media and whatnot, these things might not have necessarily been in your head. So can you give us some examples of what's popped up that you weren't expecting, just so people get an idea of what can be achieved if they do indeed go viral as well?
Yeah, so I would say that the opportunity is huge and so exciting. The reason being is it's fair game for everyone. Like, this is a fair playing field for everyone. Like, you don't have to be unique, you don't have to be special. You can do your own thing, and you can have as much chance of going viral as I did if you're consistent, putting in the work and, like you said, hard work. Obviously, everyone has their bread and butter. I had my bread and butter in finance. I was full-time, stuff like that. Moved into socials, started spinning more plates. But the massive possibilities that I've seen is that, look, people go into property, stuff like that. We spoke a little bit off just camera there in terms of property is not my most exciting thing. I do believe that it's quite a slow burner. And just to tie this in, this is a question that I would ask people is why would you invest into property? I did a video about this earlier about investing into property mentors. Why would you put 25K into a property that's going to, you know, sit there, or a mentorship or whatever it might be? But it's a slow burner. It's a slow burner.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas if you apply smart marketing and sales and an online business or a social monetization strategy, you know, I've got very close friends who are on TikTok earning 30, 40,000 on average a month. You don't get that from a property portfolio. And if they wanted to buy property, they could buy several property every single year just off of that wage alone and still live a very comfortable life. But they put in 18 months solid work, sometimes even quicker, on social media. So, you know, my message at the moment is you've really got to look at the times. You know, it was a great time to buy property in the 70s and 80s and 90s. Things have changed now. Things have changed. We need to, again, I'm a big believer. I said this obviously before. I'm a big believer in moving with the times and not getting left behind, because that kind of bugs me, thinking if someone else has got a great opportunity, what are they doing? How can I adapt and jump on that wagon? So the massive opportunity that I've seen, one is just the income from TikTok is more than you can get. Is more than you're going to get from an average buy to let. And that's weekly. Secondly, the brand deals, one brand deal, depending on who pays you and how many followers you got. This is all dependent on variables of how many followers you've got and stuff like this. But I can tell you the brand deals that I've earned would probably pay me more in a week than 7 outright properties would earn you. So you've got to weigh it up. So why would, you know, that's why I'm trying to spread the message of saying, if you want to go into property and that's what you want, great. But I'm just throwing the other option is that, look, if you put in hard work and you can get eyes on you and you have a good infrastructure and you've got something set up for when you hit this mass video or whatever it is, and all these people now start typing in on Google and start searching you, have you got something where you can capture them, to work with them, to build them into your business? Because that could then generate a huge amount of revenue that is going to outperform slower assets. So brand deals and just the actual monetization alone off of TikTok is somewhat sexy to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. Put the numbers on like that, and you know, I imagine that's going to get a lot of people excited. I just want to echo a point that you made, and it's something I completely agree with. That obviously, you know, the Property Nomads podcast, most people that listen to this will be property people, but we're starting to get more people that have got an interest in it, but actually have got other, you know, activities outside, like myself included. And yeah, absolutely, you have to go with the market trends. You know, like many people, you jump balls deep into property, you think this is the best thing since sliced bread. Hey, I like it, it works well, we haven't got an issue with it. But actually, the more you start going down the rabbit hole or learning other skills and whatnot, actually you start looking at it going, well, hang on a minute, we've got, in your case, social media, in my case, looking at it go, well, actually, there's a bunch of bullying here that we could do. Can we monetize a newsletter? Can we monetize this? Can we get a touch point here? You know, it's not all about the property, because ultimately you make that much cash, you could then just go and, you know, invest in it in due course. It's not always about here and now.
That's it. I mean, even like with my finance, you know, I try, you know, it's only recently really I've started being a little bit more open and kind of giving people a bit of an insight to the insides of it. But, you know, there are so many ways. Not everyone can start to save up to get into property. And look, property does do the job, does what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
I can tell you from working with some of the wealthiest people in the UK is they're all business owners first and foremost. And property is purely a pump and dump act. You know, when you've got someone who's got 10 to 30, 40 or whatever million in the bank that they need to move for all different reasons, tax reasons, you know, other reasons, they'll just pump it into property because they're not going to generate anything. That's why property, this does frustrate me when people say property will generate you and give you a great net worth. Yes, it will, but it will just add to your net worth. You won't create your net worth as in cash flow. You won't become the millionaire from the cash flow of the property. Your net worth will be because of the asset value.
Yep.
There's a difference, and I think there's just a wording thing. So if people want to get into property, that's absolutely fine. But at the same time, I do think it's important if you are if you're going to be and call yourself an entrepreneur is someone who creates things and moves with the times and is willing to say, actually, that's not working to the best of my ability. I need to change and I need to pivot because this is what's happening. And let's face it, even in finance, there's so many awesome ways to earn good amounts of money.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at property, even in finance, I remember meeting a guy, and this is what got me into finance. It was many years ago. It was nearly 10 years ago now. I think he was driving an Aston Martin, and I was at this meeting with him, and I spoke to him and I said, what is it you do? And he said, he wasn't a broker as such, but he was like a middle guy for equity and stuff like that. And I said, wow, like, how did you get into that? And he kind of really was one of the first ones that I ever spoke to when I started getting into finance myself. And he was like, I just work with high-end clients now, and they've got deep pockets, and you can charge huge amounts of money. And then obviously when I started getting into the thick of it, that there are ways that you can earn the same amount of money within 1 month in a finance, industry, whatever it is you go into, that 4 or 5 properties would never make you in 4 or 5 years of owning them outright. So why would you spend your time? So, there's lots of ways of making money. It's got to suit you. But I do think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to be open to moving with the times and making sort of shifts here and there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. That's something I've definitely learned over the last sort of 4 or 5 years as well. So no, completely echo that. Quickly going back to social media then. So I say that and I paused because that means I've forgotten what I was going to say. Do you have any other top tips? I know that sounds cheesy and cliche, but I'm going to say it anyway. Let's just say, talking to someone like me, I haven't got much of a social media presence, and you say, Rob, right, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to grow you on social media. What would you say to me? What can people take away from this to crack on, basically?
I would just say that you've got to look at the long term and everything. So, for me, I've always been able to, even when it comes to my own finances or business, I've always been able to pause and just take a moment to think, okay, I'm really excited to jump into it now, but what does it look like, what I've got going on in 18 months? And what does it look like to potential collaboration? So, when I started my TikTok, I even aesthetically set it up to sort of appeal to certain brands that I want to work for. Everything that I've done, even my Instagram or my YouTube, I've always wanted it to be broad enough and open enough that if it scales and it does grow and everything goes to plan, that in however many months or years, a brand could look at me, go through my content, and I'm appealing to them. Like, I always want the possibility of someone going, we like your content, it appeals to us, you're broad enough, and that we can work together, opposed to going too niche. So that would be one of my tips, is not to go too niche, because I can tell you now, I know a lot of property investors who started a YouTube channel, grew a very decent sized following, and then 2-3 years later, they're bored of talking about property or whatever it is they're talking about, and they want to make a slight change in their topics or their videos, and their audience goes, "Oh, hang on a minute, what are you doing? We're not following you. We're not following you for a vlog in a Christmas market." So, and then they lose, but because passion comes and goes. And unfortunately, if you're going to go into it, so I would say start broad, have a few subjects that you like to talk about and break it into a split. Mine's like a 70-20-10 split. 70% is my consistent content. 20% is a little bit spicy. 10% is like content just solely to engage and reply to audiences in videos and lives and stuff like that. So I keep it nice and broad. Other than that, I would always say just look at your own content and really ask yourself the question, is it valuable? Is it going to cause a reaction, good or bad? Try to go for the good. And, what's your setup like in terms of just the basics? Is the audio good? Is the visuals good? Are you using good hashtags? Like, play into the platform's algorithm. It's like anything. If you give a car good fuel, it's going to run well if you look after it. If you're just pumping out shit, it's not gonna go far. So it's the same with an algorithm. If you feed it crap and you're not changing it, and you're just pumping out all this crap, don't expect to grow. It's not going to happen. I'm going to sit there this evening when everyone's gone to sleep and I'm laying in bed. I'm going to analyze what I thought went well today and what didn't, and then I'll change it again tomorrow. So stay close to it, I suppose, is my final message. Stay close to your content, and be very hands-on. I wouldn't say outsource your content. I know too many people have paid X amount of £100 a month just to say to someone, just manage my social media, and they never grow and they wonder why, because they're not staying close to it.
Makes sense. I think that's a great point to leave on as well. So you probably, if you're watching on video, I've just been scribbling away notes as well as making mental notes. Aaron, we've mentioned a few brands as well. So if people want to get in touch with you, how do people find you?
Yeah, I mean, best thing to do, drop me a DM on Instagram, which is Aaron Knightley Official, or, Aaron Knightley on all social handles. That's TikTok, that's YouTube, it's LinkedIn, or, just on Google, Aaron Knightley. I've got a website there, aaronknightley.co.uk. And by all means, drop me an email or drop me a DM.
Perfect stuff. As usual, we'll put those links in the show notes. I've taken a lot away from today. So thank you very much for your time and for sharing your experiences and things things that you're doing at the moment, and good luck moving forward. I'm sure our paths will cross in due course.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, mate. Been a pleasure.